Okay, let's talk about the cardinal utility analysis. This is one of the first topic which is given in your course in Indian Economic Services, and I don't think even though that is directly being given in the syllabus in Indian Administrative Services, but still you should be starting from this particular topic, and then we will build up upon this. So the first thing which is one of the major assumption of the cardinal utility analysis is the cardinal measurability of utility. For example, you pick up a pen and you should be able to say how much utility it gives you, right? Ordinal utility analysis is when it just tells you can just say whether this pen gives you more utility than some other pen, right? So apple gives more utility than the oranges. But in cardinal analysis, it says that it gives you how much utility. This is something which is very important here. And of course, they are measurable and they are quantifiable in terms of utils. Utils is the measure of the utility, okay? The unit of utility in which it is measured, utility is measured. And all of these marginal utility, all of these utilities, these utils are measured in terms of the marginal utility of money. Right? So all of this is important for us, that it is measured in terms of the marginal utility of money. Right? For example, see, because what is money? Money is telling you what is the general purchasing power, right? Um, when Marshall has developed this cardinal utility analysis, then he says this, that what is the amount you are willing to pay for a unit of a good rather than to go without it. For example, if I ask you that what is the amount you can pay for this pen which you're holding right now rather than to go without it. So whatever amount you say, that amount is the util. That amount is the utility which you derive from that particular good, right? So money is nothing but the measuring rod, okay, in which utility is measured, right? Then the another assumption is the assumption of independent utilities. So right now you are looking at this video, you're watching this video from in your computer or laptop or phone. You have a paper, you have a pencil, you have a pen. So there are so many other goods which you're using. So independent utilities would mean that all of these goods are giving you utilities in terms separately. For example, pen gives me 5 utils, laptop gives me 100 utils, phone gives me 200 utils, and so on and so on the other. So whatever utility phone is giving me, that is not dependent upon the utility which I derived from the pen. These are independent utilities. This is what is meant by independent utility. So this is what is important for us. So what are they trying to say? Cardinals, they are trying to say cardinalists, they are trying to say that total utility which you derive from the collection of goods is nothing but the addition of the utilities which you derive from individual goods, right? For example, if there are n goods x1 through xn, so the total utility which you derive from x1 through xn is nothing but the utility which you derive from x1 plus utility which you derive from x2 and so on to the utility which you derive from xn and so on and so forth. Then you have, and for example, and this is important for us, that they have assumed that the utility is additive. So let me just write it for you as well. So it is the total utility is ux1 plus ux2 and so on to uxn, right? Then you have constancy of marginal utility of money, right? So this is also important. This is one of the questions I think which has been asked in the paper as well in Indian Economic Services. I don't remember about IAS, but they have asked this at least in IES paper. I'll be doing those questions once I've completed this particular topic. Then I'll be seeing that what kind of questions have appeared in the paper. So this is one question which they have asked. And this is also one of the assumptions, that constancy of the marginal utility of money. See, you are measuring the utility which you derive from a particular good in terms of the marginal utility of money. So if with every good, the marginal utility of money will keep on changing, then you cannot say anything, right? You cannot say anything. So you assume that the marginal utility of money, the utility which you derive from the money, at least that is constant. That is not changing. In real life, it doesn't happen like that. For example, in case of the price of the good falls, then the purchasing power increases. When the purchasing power increases, then it means that, yeah, it means that the marginal utility of money will fall. When price of the good rises, then purchasing power falls, right? So it means that the marginal utility of money will rise, right? So in these two scenarios, marginal utility is changing. But still, what Marshall has assumed is that marginal utility of money is constant. That is not changing, right? And the reason and the way he has defended his argument, that amount of the money which you are spending on a particular good is very small, so it doesn't change, right? Not very realistic argument, right? We will be criticizing the theory as we'll move on. So this is important for us. See, guys, understand one thing. He has assumed that the marginal utility which you derive from the goods, that will keep on falling. But those utility which you derive from the good is being measured in terms of the marginal utility of money, but the marginal utility of money is not changing. That is constant, right? Money is the unit of measurement. In case of itself, that is going to vary. It cannot yield the correct measurement of the utility for the goods. That is what the idea was. Then the another assumption is the introspective method. See, how is it that you have thought about the marginal utilities? How is it that you have thought about that utility will keep on falling as you consume more and more of a good? See, all of this has come from the introspective method. Introspective method would mean, for example, I know about myself that in case if I'll consume the one unit of one good, one particular good, that gives me some utility. If I'll consume the second unit of that good, then the second unit will give me the lesser utility, and so on. So I thought about myself that what is true for me may be true for everyone else, right? So I have attributed what is true for me will be true for everyone else. So this is introspection. So this result is based on the introspection. So even the law of diminishing marginal utility for goods, that is also based on introspection. So these are the four major assumptions of the cardinal utility analysis, right? And from here, we get two laws. One is the law of diminishing marginal utility, another is the law of equi-marginal utility. Let's see, what are those? Okay, now let's talk about the law of diminishing marginal utility, right? So what does the law says? That you consume one unit of one good, right? It gives you certain level of satisfaction. You consume the any other unit of, the second unit of that good. It gives you a satisfaction which is little lesser than the first unit, and it keeps on falling. Eventually it can become zero, and it can also become negative in case if you keep on increasing the quantity of consumption, right? So formally, the additional benefit which a person derives from a given increase in his stock of a thing diminishes with every increase in this stock he already has, right? So most of us would have done that example in class 12th economics, in which we would have said, um, the satisfaction which you derive from the first chapati is the maximum. Then it goes on falling with the second chapati. It keeps on falling and falling from the third. Eventually becomes zero at fourth and can also become negative at fifth. Right. So if you keep on increasing your consumption beyond a satiation point where your utility is met, then it won't give you a positive utility. it can give you the negative utility as well. Well, so this is what the law of diminishing marginal utility is. Well, this is based upon two things. One, even though if you look at the total amount of wants which the individual has, they can be unlimited, right? They can be unlimited. But as far as each single want is concerned, that is satiable. So I may want a laptop, I may want a phone, I may want a house, I may want a car, I may want a scooter, I may want this and that, whatever it is. But each single one, right? How many phones I would have? One, okay, at max two. If I'm completely insane, three, right? I cannot keep on increasing my consumption of phones unnecessarily, right? So each single want is satiable. Each single want is satiable, even though the total wants are unlimited. This is important. The second thing which you also have to remember is that each good, I mean, each goods, they're not perfect substitutes of each other, right? Because in case if they are perfect substitutes of each other, then what can happen is that the unit of the good, it can be devoted to the satisfaction of the other wants, and it can yield as much as satisfaction as it did initially, right? So the marginal utility of that good will not fall in that particular case in case the goods are substitutes of each other. Then this is the diagram which we have drawn. So in the first, in the upper panel you have the total utility curve, and in the lower panel you have the marginal utility curve, right? So when you are at Q1 here, then this is the level of total utility which you have, right? You keep on increasing the utility, sorry, you keep on increasing the consumption, utility would increase, but the rate of increase is falling. Every time this is becoming flatter and flatter, and eventually it can also become negative. So this is maximum at this particular point. The total utility is maximum. After that, utility will keep on falling. It will increase. I mean, it's not that it is not increasing. So it is increasing here, but what is happening is that it is the level of increase is falling every time. So the marginal utility was maximum in the first one, keeps on falling with the second, keeps on falling with the third, can become zero with fifth, and after that it can become negative, right? So this is the thing. Now, what about what is the significance of the diminishing marginal utility? See, even though I'll be coming back to this point in detail in just meanwhile in this lecture itself. So what is the significance? See, we will see very shortly that how diminishing marginal utility of a good, this assumption, it helps us to draw the demand curve, right? How it tells that the demand for the good will increase when the price of the good will fall, right? So it is because of the diminishing marginal utility of the good that we are able to draw the demand curve which is downward sloping, right? Secondly, it also helps us in explaining the dam and water paradox, right? See, you have to understand one thing, that how is the price of the commodity is determined. Price of the commodity is not determined because of the total utility, right? It is determined because of the marginal utility which that particular good provides you. Now, water is available in the abundant supply. So its marginal utility is very low, the relative marginal utility. While and because of that, price is low or even zero. But as far as diamond is concerned, diamond is very, very scarce commodity, right? So its relative marginal utility is very high, right? And this explains the reason why their prices are also very high, right? Now let's talk about the law of equi-marginal utility. Okay, now let's talk about the principle of equi-marginal utility. So we've already talked about the law of diminishing marginal utility. Let's talk about the principle of equi-marginal utility. As you guys could see, now what does this mean? For example, you have two goods, X and Y, and the prices of two goods are also given to you, and you have certain amount of income, right? So the law of equi-marginal utility says that you will spend your income on two goods in such a way that the utility which you derive from the last rupees spent on each good is equal. I'll tell you just now what does this mean. So consumer is in equilibrium when the marginal utility of the money expenditure is same on each good, right? So let's see. So for example, there is a single commodity case. There is only one good X, and what can happen is that either consumer will purchase X or he'll keep money with himself. So in case if he is keeping money to himself, it means that he is not purchasing. Well, consumer will be purchasing the good if the marginal utility which he derives from the good is more than the marginal utility of money, right? Of keeping to himself. So if the marginal utility which he derives from the good is more than the marginal utility of money being kept to himself, he will buy the good. Otherwise, he won't, right? And that has been what is shown here, that consumer can either purchase good X or keeps money to himself. So consumer will exchange his money for good X if MUX is greater than MUM, right? So, and till what time he will reach the equilibrium? He'll be reaching the equilibrium at point where the marginal utility of the good X is equal to the marginal utility of money. So generally we write marginal utility of money being weighted by the price of good X. So we write it this way. Px into MUM shows the constant marginal utility is being weighted by Px. So MUM is your constant marginal utility. So in equilibrium, as we have shown you, that MUX should be equal to MUM, or you can say MUX is equal to PX MUM. So, or you can write MUX upon PX equals to MUM. So now we have drawn this curve. On the x-axis, you have the consumption of X, and on the y-axis, you have marginal utility. The downward sloping curve is the marginal utility of good X, right? This horizontal straight line is your marginal utility of money being weighted by the price of goods. Well, if you look at this area, now in this area, what is happening? That consumer can increase his satisfaction by increasing the amount of good X. So, for example, if he is at this point, this particular point, the marginal utility which he derives from good X is more than the marginal utility of money. So it is better for him to buy good X. Similarly here, marginal utility which he derives from good X is more than the marginal utility of money, so he's better off buying good X. Till he reaches point T, where the marginal utility of X is equal to the marginal utility of money. But then in this area, what happens? That the marginal utility of money becomes more than the marginal utility of good X. So what he can do, for example, if he reaches this point, right? The marginal utility of good X is less than the marginal utility of money. So he's better off consuming less of X, right? So the equilibrium is reached at point E. Let me just, right. So this is an equilibrium which looks like this. Then you have a two commodity case here. Well, we consume many commodities, right? For example, we can take up two commodity case and then we can generalize it to any number of commodities. So we can say, supposedly, if there are two commodities, X and Y, well, the marginal utility schedule for X and Y need not be same. The way marginal utility curve for X looks like may not be same as the marginal utility of Y looks like, right? So they can be different, and they are different, right? So what will a rational consumer do? A rational and the utility maximizing consumer will be doing what? I mean, he'll be picking up the commodity which gives him the highest utility first, right? And then he picks up the commodity which gives him the second highest utility, right? And so on. So there are two commodities here. Supposedly, if X gives him the first highest utility, then he picks up X, and then he picks up Y, which gives him the second highest utility. So what happens is that in this process, he's switching off his expenditure from X to Y, right? And he'll be doing it in such a way that he reaches a point where the marginal utility of each commodity per unit of each expenditure is same. This is the law of equal marginal utility. So I just mark this. This is important for us. Where marginal utility of each commodity per unit of each expenditure is the same. This is the law of equimarginal utility. At equilibrium, MUX has to be equal to PX MUM, right? MUY has to be equal to PY MUM. Or you can write MUX upon PX MUM equals to 1, MUY upon PY MUM equals to 1. Both of them are equal. So basically what you can write is this. MUX upon PX equals to MUY upon PY. MUM and MUM can get cancelled out. So you have this relation with you. This is the relation which we are talking about. Okay. This is the relation which we are talking about. So this particular thing is the utility maximizing rule. This is the utility maximizing. It says that consumer is going to reach his equilibrium when the marginal utility which he derives from each rupee spent on the two goods X and Y is the same. So MUX upon PX shows the marginal utility which he derives from X by spending on X. MUY upon PY shows the marginal utility which he derives from Y by spending on Y. So marginal utility derived from each rupee spent on each good is same. Right? Well, marginal this law could be used in order to derive the demand curve as well. I've told you earlier as well that we'll be using this law and the law of diminishing marginal utility in order to derive the demand curve. So law of diminishing marginal utility says that MUX is a downward sloping curve, as we have shown it here. Law of equimarginal utility says that uh, M, at equilibrium, MUX has to be equal to PX, and that's what we have shown here. So MUX curve is being drawn, and the prices are P1. Equilibrium is at this point, E1, right? So at E1, X1 is what is being demanded. So when prices were P1, X1 is what is being demanded. Right? That's the first point on the demand curve for X. Now suppose prices fall to P2. So this curve shifts down like this and it intersects MUX curve here. And this is E2, right? Where the demand is X2. So when prices fall, demand increases like this. And you have the demand curve which is downward sloping, and this is the way you get you derive the law of demand derive the demand curve from the law of equal marginal utility and law of diminishing marginal utility. Well, there are certain drawbacks of the cardinal utility approach as well. So one of the drawback which is generally shown is that cardinal approach assumes that utility could be measured, but in reality, just think about it. Can you measure the utility? Can you quantify the utility? You can just say that yes, it gives me some utility, but you cannot say how much utility how much utility a particular thing gives. You can say that this good gives me a higher utility than that good, but you can't say how much, right? That is one thing. Secondly, marginal utility of money is not constant. It also keeps on changing. We've given you an example earlier as well, right? So when prices of good have fallen, the real income have increased, marginal utility of money will fall, right? So that is not constant, but you have assumed it to be constant. So that is also wrong. Again, Law of diminishing marginal utility is being based on introspection, and it has been accepted as an axiom without any empirical verifiable data. Okay, so that is another criticism what has been given to the cardinal approach. The other criticism is that the cardinal utility approach and the derivation of demand curve, which is on the basis of this cardinal approach, is based on the ceteris paribus assumption. Right? You assume everything else is same. That in itself is wrong. How can everything else be same? Right? I mean, in real life, do you really think when price increases, demand falls? Always? No. Income of the consumer might change, fashion change, taste changes, many other things will change. So you can't say categorically that yes, it will when price increases, demand will fall. But you can say that only in case of the ceteris paribus assumption, and that's what has been shown here. That you have derived the demand curve on the basis of this. So that in itself is wrong. And because of this particular reason, this cardinal approach is ignoring the substitution effects and income effects, which operate simultaneously, right? So this is broadly what I wanted to do in the cardinal utility analysis. Okay. Now let us look at the kind of the questions which have appeared from this particular topic uh, in this, right? So the first thing which has come is in question number 2, IES 2013 paper. They said cardinal utility approach and ordinal utility approach to demand suggest same decision rule for optimizing consumer. Yet the latter approach is preferred over the former. Guys, I think the better answer for this could be given only once we have done the ordinal utility approach. Even though some part of the question could be tackled here itself, where they have said what first of all you need to tell the decision rule. What is a decision rule? What is an equilibrium rule in the cardinal utility approach? Then you will also tell what is the decision rule in the ordinal utility approach. And they are saying that ordinal utility is better than cardinal utility. That has been said generally. So you will tell what are the drawbacks of the cardinal utility and what are the advantages of the ordinal utility. Drawbacks of the cardinal utility we have already discussed, like here, right? We've already discussed it here. So the complete answer would be given once we have done the ordinal utility part as well. Now let's look at this thing. Question number 1A IES 2017 paper. Why do we need constancy of marginal utility of money in the cardinal utility analysis? We have already done this question. If you look at the initial part of the lecture in which we have said that there is an assumption of the cardinal utility of, there is an assumption of the constant marginal utility of money. We have discussed this. Right? So you can write this in your answers. Then there is this question which has appeared in IAS 2012 paper. Right? Question number 1A, I guess. Question number 1A, I guess. Yeah. IAS 2012 paper. Paper 1, Economics Optional. Validity of Marshall's equimarginal utility depends on the assumption of unitary elasticity of marginal utility curves of commodity under the budget constraint. Comment. Well, I've given you some points for this particular answer. So what are those points? Law of equimarginal utility, if you look at it, this is based on which assumption? This is based on the assumption of constant marginal utility of money. Right. Well, this also implies that the marginal utility function of the commodities is unitary elastic over the relevant range. What does it mean? In case if these functions are unitary elastic, it means that when there is a 1% increase in the price of the commodity, the quantity demanded will fall by 1%. Right. So there is no change what is happening in the expenditure side. So there is no change in the expenditure. Right? And when there is no change in the expenditure, then only real income can remain the same. Right? At the new prices, real income is also the same as it was when the prices were original prices. Right? When you have the unitary elastic MU curve or unitary elastic demand curves in this case. But supposedly, if in the relevant range, the utility function has the elasticity of less than unity, then what will happen? When there is a fall in price, right, then total expenditure can increase, right? So in that case, what will happen? Sorry, a fall in price will reduce the total expenditure and everything else remaining the same. When it reduces the total expenditure and the prices have fallen, real income will uh, real income will increase. And this increase in real income will lower the marginal utility of money. You understand what's the way out, right? That is, if the utility function is of less than unitary elastic case, then what will happen in that case? When the prices will fall, total expenditure will also fall. When total expenditure will fall, real income will increase. When real income will increase, marginal utility of money will fall, right? And hence you will demand more goods, right? So that's not an equilibrium. So the assumption of the constant marginal utility of money, it requires that unitary price elasticity of marginal utility and the demand curves over the relevant range of price variations. So this has what been asked in both your IES and the IAS papers related to this particular topic, right? Thank you very much.